Hello and welcome to Quilt Addicts Anonymous. I'm Stephanie Soebbing. Today we're going to be doing a quilting play-by-play so you can see how I quilted Scatter, our latest Stash 'Em with Stephanie quilt. So what I do is I hook a GoPro up to my long arm, and then you guys are able to watch me in real time as I go through and quilt it, and I talk through how to do it and also why I'm making different quilting decisions based on, I don't know, gobs and gobs of hours of quilting experience. In this one, I used ruler work in order to accentuate everything. And I'm being a little cheeky with the title of this video about everything you knew about quilting with open seams is wrong, because I pressed every single one of these seams open and I did essentially stitch in the ditch, or what you would do with stitch in the ditch when your seams are pressed open, because there isn't actually a ditch if you press your seams open. So I'm going to talk about all of that as we go through today's video. As you can see, I was able to get right into points and it looks absolutely fantastic, and I have no issues with busting threads or anything like that. So I'm able to get some really great results. So we're going to go over all that today in just a minute. Before we get to that though, I want to tell you about Stash 'Em with Stephanie, which is our subscription club that we sent out all this lovely fabric for. What we do is we send out 10 fat quarters for $32.49 a month. It's about a 20% discount for you. And we also send you a free pattern that's been inspired by the fabric to go with that. And almost always it comes in multiple sizes. So if you want to make a smaller size, you would just be able to grab some background fabric from your stash and go for it. But also we offer what's called a finishing kit, where you get the 5 fat quarters you did not receive from your 10-piece bundle, plus your background and binding. And you also get a 20% discount on that and any additional fabric that you want to get from the line. If you want to do, make it bigger, or just have something else in mind, you just want to add it to your stash, or you want to get all your backing fabric, whatever you want to do, you can do that. You also get access to all of my previous Stash 'Em with Stephanie patterns for free. I think it's over a $400 value now, and you get that as soon as you join. So it's a great immediate bonus once you join. And so you can really bust that stash this year, feel good about buying new fabric because you have made it through some of your previous fabric. I know I always feel good about buying new after I've wrapped something else up. It makes me feel like, you know, I've used the craft supplies for their intended purpose. I've done the thing, I've enjoyed the thing, I've maybe gifted the thing, and now I can freely start a new one without being concerned about my ever-growing pile of UFOs, because it's a big pile. I've shown it to you guys before. But anyway, so that's how I feel about that. You also get access to an exclusive discount on my 2 fat quarter books, Fat Quarter Workshop and Fat Quarter Patchwork Quilts. So it is a lot, and exclusive discounts throughout the year as well. So if you're looking to quilt on a budget, this is perfect for you. You can check out some of our previous bundles that we've done on our website so you can get a feel for the fabric, and I think you're really gonna love it. All right, now make sure you sign up by the end of December in order to get your first shipment around the 22nd of January. If you sign up January 1st or later, you're going to be looking at a February 22nd ship date. And so we have time to get everything together, get it shipped out to all you guys. And once we do release that pattern, there is kind of a mad dash on additional fabric. So we want to make sure everyone has the same chance, because things like, you know, this butterfly print are going to sell out rather quickly because they're awesome. And so we want to make sure everyone has the same chance of doing that. So we ship everything all at once from the previous month's renewals and new orders. So that's that. All right, that's enough chatting. You can get the pattern Scatter over at shop.quiltaddictsanonymous.com. That'll be free if you join the club. And we're going to get in and watching the play-by-play. So I chose to do ruler work for this quilt. Ruler work takes a little bit more time. I think in all it took me about 12 hours to do this quilt. But I really love the look of it, and I love how it accentuated both the design and the fabrics through my thread and quilting choices. So the first thing you're seeing me do is I'm going to outline the entire background. So I went through my entire background first because that's about half of the real estate on the quilt, and that gets everything kind of solidified in place. And what you're seeing me do here is stitching in the ditch, which is not, there isn't really a ditch when you press the seams open, but there is next to the seam line. So I'm stitching literally as close to that seam line as I can get. and I'm going from there. And the reason why I like to outline everything first is I'm going to be quilting in 1-inch intervals going across. And when I outline first, then I'm able to travel across those intervals in order to be able to just sort of stay in line with that. And it makes it much less obvious, especially when you have a really buildable thread, meaning you can go over it a few times without it looking weird. So you're seeing me here, I'm just traveling up in that outline that I already did, and I'm coming straight down. Now that's a seam right there. I'm just going to one side or the other, and I'm able to work across. Now that blue tape you're seeing on my ruler, that's an Italia Bonner 4-in-1, and I have the tape at the 1-inch mark. Now I use the 2 and 3-inch marks too, and you'll see that later on. But I like to tape the 1-inch mark because it's a really good guide, because then I can line up the side of that with the line that I just stitched, and it's really easy to sort of keep going. Now, the biggest thing to think about when you're doing this is you need to have a ruler foot, and you need to have an extension base if you're doing it on a long arm. All right, so here I am, I'm getting into the next section of background. So I'm gonna outline as much as I can here, keeping in mind that I've already done part of it. So I've already done that sort of top left corner, and because it worked out a little bit better to do that, because I could get an entire length coming down here. So like this section, I quilted separately than here. So I'm able to do the outline in the section I have not quilted yet. And then again, I'm just traveling along there. But when you have the ruler foot on, your needle is always going to be exactly 1/4 inch away from the edge of your ruler. So that's kind of something you have to get used to doing, especially when you're going on a diagonal like that, is making sure that the side of your ruler is always 1/4 inch away from wherever it is you would like to be. In this case, I'm just lining up that 1-inch mark, which is marked by that painter's tape, with whatever my previous stitching line was, and I'm kind of working my way from left to right. And I'm going just across the entire quilt, and I've lined it up top to bottom like normal. Sometimes I'll turn it sideways, but I did not with this one. And then I'm just going to keep moving on to the next part. So you can see that I have already done that top corner where the orange is, and I did that on a previous pass. And so now I'm just kind of working my way through, traveling between where those points are when needed. So this is an example. I've got the ruler lined up 1/4 inch away from where I need to be, which is going into that point. And then I'm just kind of flipping it around to get where I need to be. Now you can see I've already quilted. Oh no, I did not already quilt that part. I am making my way back down to that center. So here, this is exactly where you're going to travel, and you kind of get used to what an inch is the more you do it, but you just kind of want to travel either to the side or down at a diagonal 1 inch, and if it's not perfect, you can back up a little like I just did there. And I'm able to move along my outlining stitches in little bits on my own and keep it nice and neat. If I need to do more than just a couple stitches, I usually will reposition that ruler. But learning how to position the ruler is really the biggest part, and a lot of it is going to be personal preference. So for me, here you can see I'm going over an outlining stitch again in order to get down to the next part. But for me, I'm right-handed, so it works best for me to drive the machine with my right hand and position the ruler with my left. You can see I've got my pinky on the side of that ruler that helps me hold it still. I do the same thing when I'm cutting with my 6x24 inch ruler. But what I like to do is hold it to the left and hold it on the bottom when possible. Now, it's not always possible to hold it on the bottom because right there it's a little tight next to where those rollers are. But if I can get it to the right and the bottom, I have the most control over where I'm putting that ruler, because when you get off, usually it's because you lost control on the ruler and you weren't quite sure what to do next. All right, so here you're gonna see me travel quite a bit. I'm traveling through a section that I've already quilted to get to the next section. And that is kind of the beauty of this. They all interlock. As far as the background goes, it's not always the case when we're doing different colored threads when we get to the fat quarter pieces. But at least for here, I'm able to really just work my way through and decide which triangle is best to travel through when I'm getting to the next part. So this was really a lot of fun for me. It took a long time to do, but it was absolutely worth it, in my opinion, to spend the time doing it. All right, so here's an example of deciding when I'm gonna stop. So you can see the bottom of the roller there. So that means I'm not gonna be able to get a straight line going all the way down from here to here. Actually, I think this is exactly where we're at in the quilt. So I'm not gonna be able to do this line here. So instead, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna travel straight up here. And that way I can get all the way up to the top, and I can quilt that entire section in one go. And there's decisions that you have to make because you want to do it as efficiently as you can. So rather than go all the way up there, I decided, in fact, I was just going to quilt this section here first and just continuing traveling an inch. And see, I overshot a little bit. I was able to come down a little bit on my own without having to adjust that ruler, but that's after a lot of practice. I'll see some folks who are primarily machine quilters where they can just sort of zip along. That's not me. I do this once or twice a month, and I think I'm pretty good at it, but I'm not doing this daily. So this is not something where I could just like swoop it up. All right, so you can see I'm not doing anything down here. I'm gonna save that for the next pass because again, I can't quilt all the way down to here because that bottom roller is in the way. So instead, we're gonna focus on getting this entire area done and filled in. So you can see I went all the way up to the top because I'm kind of figuring, okay, where do I need to end up at? And that's gonna be over here so I can travel into the next section. So it makes sense to come all the way over here and work my way back because I've already done this. So I need to fill in this section here, and then I can travel on to the next bit. So those are decisions that you kind of have to make as you're going because each little section is going to be a little different. And it's not the end of the world if you make not the most efficient choice. It just means you're going to be traveling a little bit more and you're going to get a little bit more practice on that. It's fine. It's totally a normal thing and you just kind of have to figure it out. All right, so you can see we've already done this part here. So we're going to come up to the top and we're going to connect here to where our point is. And then we're going to finish going out the rest of the way. And it may not look it from the camera angle, but I promise you that that painter's tape was right on that corner so that it could connect. All right, so I finished that. So we're gonna travel along to get to the next section. And so that's essentially what it is just going again and again, filling out what you can and deciding what you're gonna leave for the next pass. So like here, I can definitely get this section, but I wouldn't be able to get all of this in one go. So this is something I would leave for the next pass. Generally, I was able to complete 2 full sections. So basically 1 block as I went across, and then I would get sections of the one below it. In this quilt pass that you're watching me do right now, I was able to go from here to here. So that meant I was able to do this entire section, so 1.5 blocks, but I was not able to do this section that needed to save for the next one. So basically each pass would get me 1.5 blocks, and then the next pass would get me 1.5 blocks. So every 2 passes, I can essentially do 3 blocks, and it worked out pretty well. And it was just, like I said, it's a slow going process. It took me about 6 hours just to do the background with this, but I really love it because even though like this section was quilted separately from this section, it looks like I have straight lines going down every single inch because I was really strategic about placing that so that way it was 1 inch always from that seam. So when you look at it as a whole, it looks like it's one continuous line that went all the way down, but I was just traveling within these stitches. And as long as you outline first, that's going to give you a nice line to travel on as you work. And as long as you use a thread that's buildable like Glide and they're poly, I use the 40 weight poly in both the top and the bobbin when I'm quilting, and it works just really, really well for that. All right, I think I'm just gonna let you watch me quilt for a little bit, and we will pick it back up when we come to the back quarters. All right, so now we're moving on to the prints of the fabric, and I am starting at the very bottom because I have done from top to bottom, and so now I'm like rolling back from here. So just like before, I'm starting off by outlining each one of these triangles. I like to always do that first because it defines the block really well, and then again provides a place for me to travel when I need it. Now for this one, I kind of wanted the blocks to point inward toward the point. So I'm stitching from my point to the center, and then we're gonna kind of do something similar for around here. And this is totally arbitrary. You can do whatever you want. This is just an idea for you guys. So now I'm outlining my second triangle, and I like to do each triangle individually because if I don't, I'm likely to miss one. I have one quilt where I did like everything, and then I found out later that I missed one. All right, so here you just saw me quilt from the corner to the middle again. And with this one, I am doing one continuous swoop. So that way I can go straight to that corner, and then I'm gonna outline. Now, if you remember, we already did that center, so I'm traveling over the line that I've already stitched, and then I'm going to make my way down the side. Now, this part did take significantly less time than my background did. Because it was less involved and there was less going on for me to do. All right, so we're gonna outline that last triangle of the block, and we're gonna create that same look where we're going to, right now, travel over the lines we've already quilted to the center, and then we're gonna come out to the point. Now, when I quilt, I like to think, how am I going to accentuate both the fabric and the quilt design so that I'm accentuating that rather than detracting from it. So I use a navy thread here, so you really can hardly even see what I'm doing, you just see the texture. So what I'm doing here is I'm traveling along the sides that I've already stitched, and I'm able to move right on to the next one. And you can see I'm going right into those points, and I went right into the points in the previous one. And so I am, again, not stitching in the ditch because there is no ditch when you press your seam open, but I am stitching right next to it on both sides of it, and there were absolutely no problems. There are times when I get off and I'm not quite next to the seam, I'm in the seam, and it doesn't split the fabric or it doesn't split the threads. They work out just fine and they last really well over time. And I'm able to do all these really precise things where I'm able to get right into those corners because the points are so flat when you press them open. This is not something I would be able to do if I had pressed the seams under, especially in one like this where you have 8 different seams coming together. This is so flat that I'm able to come in, and I have both stitched in the ditch on both sides of all of these, plus stitched in to the center of each one of these, and there's no problems whatsoever. I didn't break any needles, I didn't bust any fuses, everything worked out just fine. So that's why when I said at the title of this video that everything you know about pressing seams open is wrong, this is why. Because you're able to do so much more with your quilting when you choose to press your seams open, and it does not damage the overall quilt. It doesn't, you don't have to worry about threads breaking. And I use Aurifil's 50 weight thread when I'm piecing, and I do it at a 2.0 stitch length, which is what is standard on my piecing stitch for my quilting machine. And I don't really do anything special. I just am able to press it open and get really, really amazing results. All right, so you're gonna see me continue to go through here. And at this point, I'm traveling again. So in this particular pass, I had so many blues that I was able to go from one side all the way to the other without breaking my thread. So you can see I'm like finding the path of least resistance there, and that's gonna be going straight through the quilting in order to get to the next one. And this is another instance where you're seeing I'm able to do about 1.5 of those blocks, where I'm not able to get the second half of the one that I just started, but I am able to get the bottom half of it. So that's something where you kind of just have to figure it out and what's going to work for you and your width of sewing machine. And what I was just showing there was I moved the tape to the 2-inch mark for that one, because I found that if I arranged the tape with the point when I was coming out, that gave me a really good point that I liked. Maybe we'll see it again here. But this is allowing me, one, to make it all the way across a pass without breaking thread and be able to quilt just the blue blocks with the blue thread. So that way I'm not like taking away from anything from there. Now you are seeing I'm not able to go any further, so I did tie off those stitches and I'm moving on to this next one here. Now if you are going to enter this into a show, you'll want to bury those threads, but otherwise if it's just for you or a gift, you can just lock the stitches in place and go ahead and snip those off, and that's fine. So now we're getting started in this next section. I wasn't able to quite connect all the way across, and so I pulled that bobbin thread to the top before we started. And again, you're going to see me start with that outlining first and handling one entire triangle at a time so you don't forget anything. And we're going to stitch down to that corner once we outline, and then we're going to stitch to the center again. Now I found for me that this worked the best when I went into the center, which I did not do there. That was not the most efficient way of doing that. But it is a way. It's a way of doing it. But here we are, we're coming all the way down to the bottom. And now I've got to work my way back out to that corner. Now here's where you're going to see me move that tape, and as the camera moves you can see that the tape is lined up with the tip of that triangle. That is just a way to help make sure that my angle is the same on every single one of those as I'm working my way around. So again, it just makes sense for me to do this entire section as one. So I did that line all together and then outlined. So that was the only one that I did it backwards, is when I was on my second triangle of the tip. That worked a little bit better for me. All right, so we need to outline our last one. And you can see I'm really pushing to try and get that underneath and to the left, because that is easier for me to keep everything in line, even though it didn't fit really great underneath those rolls. I just get a lot better results when I'm able to keep the ruler underneath. Now, these quilting templates are different than the rulers that you cut with. They are a 1/4 inch thick, and so that way your ruler foot is not going to hop on top of them. And so that's really important when you're looking for them. But there's so many out there on the market, and once you get the hang of just keeping your ruler foot next to your ruler at all times, you're able to do any shape out there. All right, so here we are. It looks like I'm able to do this entire one, but you can see, I think what we'll do is we'll just do some fast forward on this again, and you can see me as I work my way across the rest of the quilt. Hopefully for this one, I'm going in towards the center. Yes, so this is the most efficient path. We'll just show this real quick. So this goes super fast. If you go from that center to the dead center of the block like that, and then you come down, then you don't have to do any extra traveling. You just are traveling a little bit from here to here, and then that's it. So it's more efficient, it's less traveling, it's less chances to mess up. And I will tell you, how much it looks like you messed up varies greatly with how good of a match your thread is to your fabric. So like these blue ones, you would never have been able to tell. This pink fuchsia one, you would not have been able to tell. This one is a little visible because the pink is a little bit darker, but it ties in really well with the butterfly. This light pink, super obvious where all the threads are. So this one is one where I had to like be very cautious and make sure that I was paying attention to where everything was at. So maybe a good idea to start with like matchy thread when you do this for the first time, because then it doesn't matter if it isn't absolutely perfect. All right, so like I said, I did some thread changes here. So I went through and I went from the bottom to the top with all the blues because that's what I had the most of. And then I did the pinks next because that one I had the second most of. And then the last three colors were ones that I only had like one fabric for. So I did a kind of orange, light orange with my orange here, a darker teal with my teal here. And I actually did a like medium level teal turquoise with this green because there is a little bit of turquoise in there and it looked really great. It just kind of faded to the background and looks great. So you're just going to keep passing back and forth, and on your last one you really want to pay close attention to make sure that you've got all of them because it's easy to miss one. I did, and I had to change threads one last time and grab that before I was like done. But it takes extra time to do ruler work, and it takes even more extra time to change out threads. But I really, really love this because the pattern shows off. Like the pattern It's just accented by the ruler work choices. We're just seeing it go up and down. It's very elongated. It's very geometric, like the entire pattern. And then the way it's quilted, it just shows texture, and the texture is pointing to the center, like our little arrow blocks here. And because I've matched the thread pretty well on all of them, what you're really seeing is just texture. And so the fabric is getting highlighted, the pattern is getting highlighted, and we are just accentuating everything rather than detracting from. And sometimes I feel like when you just don't take that extra time, you end up detracting from the pattern instead of helping to let it live its best life. So that's how I chose to quilt scatter. You can do it however you want, but I wanted to show you some tips and tricks and also check out the ruler work. On my schedule for January is filming a ruler work masterclass. So if you want to learn more about this, make sure you are liked and subscribed, and also on our email list over at shop.quiltaddictsanonymous.com, because we will have a video course coming for this. I've got my course list planned. I need to actually start filming it though. So it'll be kind of like our free motion quilting one, where you have a full quilt at the end, so you can do it on your home sewing machine or a domestic or a long arm. Either will work, but it will be a really fun course. And I love ruler work because it makes me look like a better quilter than I actually am, which always makes me feel good, and bet you it makes you guys feel good too. Because really, once you get the hang of keeping that ruler foot next to the ruler at all times, you can do anything. Absolutely anything. It's just a matter of what do I have the patience for and the time to pull off between when I have started quilting and when it needs to be done. All right, make sure you check out Stashin' with Stephanie, and we should still have some kits available of this and the pattern scatter over at shop.quiltaddictsanonymous.com. Thanks, and until next time, happy quilting.